Hi, everybody. It's me, Stephanie Lynn Theobald, here with a message. Today, the message is going to be a little bit different than what I typically do on the channel, okay? And I have some nice notes I'm just going to go through with you guys, okay? So, what I want to talk about today is you've heard of your third eye, okay? What about your third ear? Okay. In the spiritual world and the psychic world, they call that clairaudience. Okay. For your third eye, they call it clairvoyance, the ability to visualize. Okay. Clairaudience is the ability to hear. Okay. So, what is clairaudience? I'm going to talk about who is it, right? Okay. And am I cray cray, right? When you think hearing voices, oh my God, right? It's not quite what you think. No, it is not. Okay. So the thing about hearing voices, right? Us that are in healthy behavior patterns, we're able to listen, right? And discern the information before acting, before behaving. People that act because so-and-so told them to do something, living or otherworldly in another realm, well, yeah, those folks do need some help in life, don't they? Right? Especially if they're engaging in behaviors that are harmful to others. But, if that's not you, obviously, I wouldn't be so worried. Sorry, I had to pause it. The dog was getting in my space because I'm filming, of course. So, anyway, so here's some of these notes if you want to take a quick look. Okay. So, much like a stoma on a leaf, okay, the third ear is part of our inner knowing, okay? I once described this to a skeptical doctor. My notes, yes, I wrote this all out beforehand for you guys, like when your mother reminds you to brush your teeth or eat your breakfast before taking off for the day. It's not like I actually was seeing a person sitting, although there are some people who are sensitive to energies at that level where they can see entities, feel entities. That is not clairaudience, okay? That is a different clair, okay? But a lot of us can actually hear things. Did you ever see that movie with Mel Gibson, What Women Want or whatever, when all of a sudden he has the ability to hear the thoughts of everybody going by? It's kind of like that, and sometimes it can be that strong, like literally if you're in the grocery store and like one day I heard a phrase I had never heard before about a booty, and I was like, what the? And I thought, oh, there's those clairs. There's those clairs chiming in, because it's like, I had never heard that phrase before. It's like, where did that come from? Some of those things, that's when you really know. It's like, yeah, I didn't come up with this. That was something else. You know what I mean? But since you're open to it and sensitive to it, for some of you, you may be a little caught off guard, right? When you start tapping into these types of things, okay? So, but yet again, it's a voice, not necessarily being heard externally, but you hear it within your mind's eye, within your third ear space, saying, oh, remember to brush your teeth today. Some of it's really not complicated. And I think psychology and a lot of doctors have wanted to make it complicated, and it isn't, especially when people are not harming themselves nor are they harming others. It's really unfortunate that our society, that our studio society, right, has gotten to the point where everything has to be analyzed and broken down into a scientific bit, when in fact miracles have been around since the beginning of time. So, you know what I mean? Okay. But the way I'm describing it to you, hopefully you can understand, even if you're not really hearing, say, messages and things like that, or other people's thoughts, that you can understand how it can come to a person in that format. Okay. Um, so again, I was saying most people have heard of a third eye, right? Which that is your sixth chakra. Okay. And then your fifth chakra is your throat, right? And so in between those two are your ears, right? This big tunnel, right? Coming right through here. We're hearing all sorts of stuff all the time, whether we want to or not, right? That's another thing in our society where we've been challenged. Putting down our phones, the distraction of other coworkers if you're in an open office environment, or if you do work from home and you still have kids running around, it's like, how can I, you know what I mean? Those commercials, right? Silence is golden because it helps our brains tune in to what we need to be doing. Yeah. Okay. So your ears are processing language, okay? Both internally, your internal voices that you hear in terms of make sure to brush your teeth, make sure to finish your breakfast before you leave the house today, right? Things like that, okay? And then your ears also process things we hear externally, right? When I was on my walk with the dog earlier today, this part's unscripted, by the way, right? I heard some kind of machinery. It was very loud, and it was like, they were cleaning up. And then I did see the farm equipment turn around. It's like, oh, okay, that's what that was. But I couldn't see it, right? I could still hear it. I knew there was something big there. I knew that I shouldn't go running in that direction like an idiot. You know what I mean? Like, again, don't overcomplicate things, folks. Right? And I also have a side note here that, this is part of the reason why, say, emotional abuse can be so horrific, because us hearing things from other people externally at us, right? And if it's things like questioning our worth and intelligence or any value, anything of that nature, right? Then that becomes something that you're hearing on the inside, right? And that can hurt our hearts and our emotions, our heart chakra, right? Our fourth chakra that we have, okay? Right below the fifth chakra. So when you get that lump in your throat, right? Just like the Grinch, because it's like, you had that feeling and it's like, oh gosh, now I can't even vocalize it, right? So when your emotions get trapped in there, right, that doesn't mean you're not still feeling them. And you might be feeling it and processing it up here, right, in your brain and in what you're telling yourself, right, internally based upon what you've heard externally, right? I was always a good student in school. That doesn't mean that I didn't get picked on by the teachers, but there were also students who, say, didn't do as well in school, right? And sometimes they had some challenging times with their teachers. So, any little thing that a teacher might say to a student, what does that become for that student, right? Repeating that message to themselves, not externally with our mouths. Oh no. Right? We're seeing it, right, in our third eye, like a mental message, and we're repeating it, hearing it, like putting headphones on and saying, well, and then you're starting to agree with it, right? Well, maybe they're right, blah, blah, blah. When in fact, they might be a big old silly, fuddy poop head brain, right? Okay? If you want to get down to it, right? Okay. When a doctor I talked to, he talked to me about OCD, and I was like, I'm not OCD. I don't flip the lights on. Do you know what I mean? I don't have to touch this 3 times before I go to bed, and how he described it was the repeating messages, right? And the rumination, right? So if somebody doesn't understand that you're hearing little reminders, they'll be like, well, you're crazy. You can't, they don't believe in clairaudience. They don't believe in having an internal monologue, for fuck's sake. Right? Pardon my French. Where did all the writers come from? Hello? It's because they're writing it down. They're not speaking it. Maybe they already heard somebody else speak it. They don't need to repeat it. Okay? Again, this part unscripted with some of what I'm talking about. But anyway, so what are your ears telling you in those times? Okay? That's the important thing that I want you to think about. This dude over here, he got rid of one of his ears because it was like so loud. He didn't have AirPods and noise canceling, and thankfully he had an understanding brother that let him paint. Paint away the madness of seeing something or hearing something that was so powerful that he didn't know, right, necessarily how to express it, right? Okay. So, more notes. When you woke up today, right, you likely heard a voice say, gotta get up. Time to get up. Okay. Most people, all right, when I say most people, normal folks out walking around, right? Most people who are, say, not tapped in to other people's thoughts and things like that, okay? They understand that, and they hear those things. They say those things to themselves. It's not, again, not complicated, okay? But folks, when they have these spiritual gifts, okay, they're going to hear these things in their own voice. The same as when you say, gotta get up. Now, and this part's funny to me, and I have this written down, yet nobody accuses them of being crazy, do they? Okay. So, clairaudience, right? Being able to hear, your third ear, is it written on the sign, or is it where you're reading something between the lines of the sign and you're interpreting it, right? And that interpretation is for you, right? When they say our God is a jealous God, people will display their jealousy if they don't understand what you're understanding. Okay. So, what are you hearing? Who is it? What am I hearing? What am I hearing? What's she even talking about over there? What's she hearing? Right? I mean, because anybody can say, oh, well, I hear the voice of my mother, or I hear the voice of my father, blah, blah. Well, okay. So, beginning at square one, right? Ground zero there, that's your ancestors. Okay? So some of you could be hearing your ancestors. That could be parents, grandparents, aunties, uncles, cousins. Okay? Some of you could hear unfamiliar voices. That's the real trip, right? When you're really tapped in and you're like when I was in the grocery store that day and I heard that phrase and I was like, it was kind of like that, and I'm like, I ain't repeating that out loud, but I know I just heard what, and I kind of did a scan around, and there was only a couple other people in my vicinity, and I kind of figured out probably who it was coming from, but, prove it, right? Prove it. Also, hearing music, right? When you're thinking of a song, and you're hearing it, but it's not playing. That's clairaudience. Not everybody has that ability. Okay? But that's what it is. So hearing your ancestors, hearing any unfamiliar voices even, hearing music, these are all clairaudient gifts. Okay? It is a gift. Okay? Just like the ability to play music and do certain things, people call that a gift. The ability to dance is a gift. Okay? Yes, is there training involved? Yes, is there such and such involved? But, right? Yeah. Sometimes it blossoms in such a way that it's very evident that's a gift. Okay? And it should be treated and cherished as such. Okay? So, we hear with our ears, okay? Then we have our throat here, and then sometimes we speaketh, right? Instead of the thoughts getting all stored up here, right, in the ADHD spin zone, right, where we're going to ruminate and OCD about, so-and-so from work and blah, blah, and I should have said that, bleh, who cares, right? Okay. Once you start letting go of that stuff, you're going to start getting in the good voices, right, that are going to say, it doesn't matter, right? Or, you know what, that, the saying of, if it doesn't, not going to matter 5 minutes from now, then don't sweat it, because 5 years, nobody's going to care, right? Okay, so those of us that are clairaudient, okay, we are speaking what others cannot see visually. Reading between the lines a little bit, right? We are also speaking what others cannot hear, right? Maybe you and one of your grandparents specifically was very close, okay? So maybe you can kind of still hear their voice. Or maybe there's something you do in your mannerisms that reminds you of them and things like that. That's your clairs kicking in, especially though when you're hearing that voicing, that is the clairaudience. Okay? And speaking what others cannot see or hear often creates a tower, a literal tower, and a tower of Babel, right? Because they're like, what are they talking about? I didn't hear anything. They're making it up. Blah, blah, blah. Whatever. They can believe whatever they want. What they can't do is impose upon you, right, things that are harmful to you, especially when you are not harming yourself nor anyone else. Okay. So, yeah, exactly. I have the, what, prove it, And, it's like, you're going to get that bent out of shape because I heard my grandmother's voice on my own friggin' time. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, why is that an issue for whoever these people are? Be it doctors, nurses. Oh, well, some of them do have a pill agenda. I'm not saying all voices are helpful, right? Including the voices of people that are telling us that our value, worth, and other things are in question and are at a worth much lower than than they can even possibly imagine. Anyway, I'm not talking about other people. Anyway, but yeah, I have it right here. What did they make Jesus do? Right? Prove it, Jesus. Do another miracle, Jesus. And at the end of the day, what did they do to him? It didn't matter how many miracles he performed. Didn't matter how many little friends he had follow him around. La 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 la. Okay? Yes. Running around all the land, performing miracles and whatnot. And then what? They still crucified him, just like they murdered the witches in Salem. Right? After proof of their crimes, which, yes, we now know was a bunch of busybodies engaging in hearsay or heresy. Right? Yeah. and gossip. That's basically a lot of this is when, especially for creative folks, it's like, oh, why are you creating that? I don't like that. It's not necessarily for you to like or dislike or, an artist creates for the sake of art, right? And the sake of expression. And sometimes it's that expression because maybe in here, the things we hear, we're not able to process it, so that we can speak or create something else for people to listen to. But that does come, and I have this written down again. Anyways, I'm going to continue with my notes. Okay, so yes. When you're tapping into your clairs, yes, you may see a jaw or two drop, folks that never believed in an afterlife, right? Especially if you are hearing things from, an ancestor, right? Because a lot of people want to be like, oh, well, when you're gone, you're gone. When you're dead, you're dead. That whole, and it's like, well, there's a whole lot of religions that talk about an afterlife, not just Christianity, okay? So before you go around running around calling everybody crazy because they can hear their ancestors, you might want to think about what y'all have been teaching everybody on Saturdays and Sundays and through the week since the beginning of goddamn time. Now who has the God complex? It ain't me. Okay? You know what I mean? Like getting bent out of shape because somebody reminds themselves to brush their friggin' teeth? Who's running the asylum? Okay? Maybe y'all need to be asking your patients that and not all these other asinine things that really don't make a hell of bean sense when you're inside a hospital and unable to access, the world where people have real responsibilities. Yeah, anyway. So, yeah, the universal power of nature, the literal laws of nature, aka physics, right? What comes up must go down. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed, right? There's an equal and opposite reaction. I mean, the mathematicians out there know about invisible numbers, and I think the physics folks, right? The physicists, I won't say the physicians because they don't have to take all that math, right? But the physicists do. And they have to take all that calculus and everything else. So, yeah. There's a lot of scientific knowledge that already exists about matter and mass and energy, right? And the laws of physics, right? Of things not being able to be, once something's created, it can't be destroyed either. So it's like, it kind of makes you wonder, it's like, well, where did it come before creation, right? Okay. Yeah, now we're really getting into it, right? So, everyone has their own, back to my notes, everyone has their own VOG, okay? Voice of God, I'm going to call it, okay? It's going to be different for everyone, okay? So, if you are down here speaking Swahili, like I wrote down, but you're happen to be visiting a country that's speaking Hindu, are you going to get the message in Hindu? No, likely not, right? You're probably going to actually get the message in Swahili, right? Because, otherwise it's that Babel strikes again, right? Sometimes we do get the messages in other forms, but we don't recognize it till later, and it's like, oh, then it starts to make sense, right? So that ethnocentrism, thinking my way is the only way. I have to receive it through the church during this type of service for it to be a relevant message. No, that's that. People that want to keep some of those things going, just like some people want to keep certain pharmaceuticals going, right? Will say otherwise. And they have lots of YouTube channels out there for those folks. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So, the our way is the best way. No, it's a way, right? And there's 25 other letters in the alphabet of different ways, right? And that's just, one alphabet, right? So, getting back to what we're talking about here, the third ear. Yes, it can be trained. But, it's like anything else, diet, exercise, hobbies, if you don't exercise it, sometimes you might not recognize it, right? Okay. So again, your third ear, like your third eye. So your third eye may be very important if you're a painter, right? Visualizing, okay? Because the painter can see what they want on the canvas, right? Okay, and then they have to try and do it, right? Okay. Somebody who feels it like in their solar plexus, okay, that might be for them, the expression of cooking, all right, is the way that they visualize, okay, what they're feeling, that messaging. For somebody else, it's coming through here. For somebody else, it's coming in through their third eye. For somebody else, it's coming through their throat. It's all depends on how you're tapped in, how you're tuned in to these types of things that are really universal in nature, okay, when you get down to it, okay? So yeah, much like, a painter who sees something, right, and then they go out and do it, somebody who's clairaudient, that could be folks also that are, musicians, right, public speakers, writers as well, okay, because you're hearing an idea, right, and then you're writing it down. Sometimes we don't write it down, right, and we think, ugh, why is that bothering me, right? Sometimes it's a good thing just to write it down, and then it may never come back to you again, and you're done with it, right? But when it keeps coming back and coming back, it's like, that's something we need to pay attention to, right? Doesn't mean that you're cray-cray. Doesn't mean that you're weird, okay? It's actually quite common. And when you start thinking about it in these kinds of terms, it actually makes sense, okay? So, the book of ourselves is still being written, is still being read out loud, okay? So tapping into what you have to offer, your gifts, if you are clairaudient and you may have some of the other clairs going on, the clairvoyance, clairsentience, is kind of more the energy thing I was talking about earlier, where it's like you don't it's not like you're seeing a person, but you feel a presence, okay? I have personally kind of gotten the figure, like a human figure type thing, kind of similar to how they show in the movies, like, some of that stuff. But for me, that's more of a recent thing. Like, I didn't really grow up, talking to ghosts and things of that nature, but I did do some other things, and had imaginary friends and things of that nature, which now I'm like, as I've gotten older and it's like looking back, I'm like, who was I talking to over there, you know? Anyway, so I hope this helped you guys today understand a little bit more about your third ear, okay? And any clairaudience gift that you might have, okay? Or maybe developing in life, okay? So it's nothing to be scared of. It is, when you think about it in kind of simplistic terms, as easy as waking up in the morning and what is that voice telling you, saying, oh, gotta get up, or it's saying, oh, I wish I could sleep in, right? It's that same type of thing, okay? But it's being able to discern that it's maybe not something that we ourselves are formulating necessarily, but we're tapping in and having a conversation, okay? The same way that, you know, somebody who visualizes, you know, a painting or a photograph setting, they're putting that composition together in their mind, right? Well, we're putting this conversation, folks that are clairaudient are putting the conversation together, right? Where there might be missing pieces. And again, that might come out in a, you know, in a screenplay, right? For somebody, say, he said this, she said that, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's all part of the creative process. Allow it to be a creative process for you as well. You know, sometimes when I do my readings, I try and think of it as, okay, this is today's As the World Turns, or, you know what I mean, soap opera type, because some of it is, right? And that's why they say, you know, it's not necessarily your energy, and that's why we do things to help ground ourselves, okay? I'm going to be making another video for the 5-minute rule, which is a great grounding exercise, okay? Especially those of you that are tapping into those spiritual gifts that maybe, you know, some of the rest of us just don't have time for. Let's be honest, right? But what I want you to really try and do and tap in and do is think about adding some of this into your routine, okay? And what it's going to actually do is it's actually going to make your life easier, okay? Some folks call it talking to God. Some folks say, you know, your ancestors. You know, does it really matter who, as long as it's benefiting you? I mean, in a healthy way. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if it was your grandma or your gram, or if it was the lady in the line at the grocery store. Right? Like they say, don't judge a book by its cover, okay? You know, at the end of the day, good advice is good advice, right? Even if it comes from somebody who obviously can barely tie their shoes, you know what I mean? We've all had struggles, right? So trying not to judge someone who's struggling, but yet giving wise advice, right? Just as I was doing to that doctor in the hospital when he's like, so, hearing voices, huh? And it's like, oh, okay. Let me educate you on what that actually means. Okay? As like, you know, when you get up in the morning, what, you know, when you brush your teeth, you hear, you know, it's like you're hearing those reminders. All right. So some of these reminders may be coming in the form of messages that your ancestors are speaking to you, okay? And just like they're telling me now, it's time to wrap it up. So I will be uploading this video soon, both to my Manifest Wisely channel, and I think also to the Feel Better Guru channel. I think it would be good to share over there. So until next time, bye-bye.